Asura's Wrath, Wrath? No, I'm going with Wrath, is a third-person action hybrid cinematic movie game by Capcom. It was released on PS3 and Xbox 360 and is one of the many games left behind to languish on past generation console hardware. Which is a shame because it's one of the most beautiful realizations of an artistic vision I have ever seen. While I would usually look to some sort of auteur when I see such a unique and cohesive work of art, Project head Hiroshi Matsuyama credits it as a group effort, with no one person responsible, and looking to the credits, it does stand out as something relatively unique amongst the people involved. So let's explore what makes Asura's Wrath so interesting. What doth to game? The QuickTime event has been almost universally reviled, yet makes up a significant portion of Asura's Wrath's gameplay. Where in other games like Bayonetta these QuickTime events would incite rage in me, here it coexists comfortably alongside rail shooter and third-person character action segments. Let us consider the purpose of a QuickTime event. The goal of QuickTimes is to give some sense of control to the player in what would otherwise be a cutscene. In other games, I would level the critique that this would typically manifest in punishing players who aren't constantly vigilant in periods where they might be wanting to rest or take a drink or something. Asura's Wrath succeeds by leaning hard into the cinematic aspect of the game. Make no mistake, this is more anime series than video game. Since a lot of the game consists of watching the story unfold, you can typically know when to expect to take an active control over your character, or when to passively appreciate the cosmic scale of some of the sequences. The game is also episodically structured, starting with recaps and beginning and ending with rolling credits, each typically not taking more than 30 minutes to complete. Button prompts are also visually prominent and have a consistent language throughout. The third-person action portions, though mechanically simple, better serve to break up any gameplay monotony and aid in pacing. And as someone who sometimes finds it difficult to sit and passively enjoy a thing like a movie, I can appreciate this as a gorgeous visual novel for people who can't stand visual novels, or an interactive movie for gamers who need something to do with their hands. The key resource central to the game's theme is your rage. Anger is how you become more powerful and beat all obstacles, and the goal always is to max out your angry bar by dealing damage. There are 3 difficulty levels, and like most character action games, there's a style ranking. To add insult to injury, this actually only matters towards unlocking the ending, which, by the way, was paid DLC. Thankfully, no part of the game is particularly difficult, apart from the time investment required to unlock this true ending. Asura is a man who has no chill. But that's okay because anger is one of the strongest powers you can use to motivate and enable you to achieve your goals. He's one of the 8 Guardian Generals, at the head of what's called the Shinkoku Army, locked in an eternal struggle with Vlitra, described as the will of the planet, a monstrous, hostile creature living inside their homeworld. Like Echidna of Greek myth, she's the mother to the species of the animalistic monsters known as the Goma. Asura and his other generals are seemingly a type of biomechanical, semi-divine beings able to wield the cosmic power known as mantra. This manifests in each of the 8 generals having a different affiliation with each of the aspects of this divine power. They are Deus, the commander of the army, affiliated with pride; Wizen, representing high cholesterol violence; Sergei, affiliated with vanity and your typical villainous effeminate bishonen you've seen in every anime, which may or may not be some old homophobic trope, I don't know. Olga, who is affiliated with lust because boobs. Kaoro, the scheming old man on his hover chair, representing sloth. August, Asura's old mentor, representing greed, but really more the embodiment of live, laugh, love. Yasha, Asura's brother-in-law, thoughtful and graceful and affiliated with melancholy. And then there's our boy Asura, affiliated with Wrath. That the cosmic power manifests itself in vices as opposed to virtues is something of a foreshadowing.
Spoiler warning. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1.
The story begins after a spectacular space battle after which Asura succeeds in beating the monster Vlitra, only to be told that it is but pacified and that nothing can stop its inevitable return.
ブリトラを仕留めるなどできはせぬ。無事沈められたことを喜ぶべきだ。
Asura returns home only to be framed for the murder of the Emperor by his fellow general.
なんだこれは。
Deus unveils to him a plan to usher in a new age where they set themselves up as gods over the planet, harvesting mantra reaped through the prayers and souls of the populace in order to amass enough power to eventually destroy Vlitra and the Goma for good. Asura's wife is murdered by Sergei, and his daughter Mithra is taken to exploit her special power to supercharge the Tool album Death Star. You might think a Tool album Death Star is an outrageous thing, but I already own one, and I find the only people surprised at such things are the pawns. In any case, Asura is left to die and awakens in Errata, a name coming from the Hindu underworld. To the urging of a little metal spider, he crawls himself out to find it is 12,000 years later and a very different world. His rage drives him forward to seek revenge on the new gods of this world, their power already consolidated, their abilities expanded. And when I say expanded, this is exemplified perfectly in a spectacular battle with Wyzen. One of the game's many incredible images is seeing the ridges of circuitry on Wyzen's fingerprint burning on atmospheric re-entry as he reaches out to crush Asura like a bug. Against all odds, Asura uses his anger to reach new heights of power, striking back and destroying Wyzen before succumbing to his damage. Yasha arrives to either gloat or pity him as he stands over his broken body. The embers of rage still stir within Asura, and they reignite as he rises to fight while lacking his arms. While he puts up a good fight and breaks through the cold facade of the mask through which Yasha regards him, Asura eventually falls and once again awakes in Errata to be urged again by the golden spider. But again and again Asura returns like a bad case of herpes to take his revenge. Kauro wagers the fleet, loses that wager, then gets crushed like a grape. Asura shares a moment of indulgence with August before another ridiculous battle finds itself scouring the surface of the moon. We spend time with Yasha long enough for him to have doubts after some exchanges with his sister's murderer, Sergei. But then, Asura appears, acting like a total rage-pilled rage cell. Asura and Yasha eventually team up to stop Deus, and just as they succeed, Vlitra awakens. Asura and Yasha then proceed to the core, where the little bro of the planet comes out and proceeds to 2v-bro them. The ultimate foe defeated, Asura returns to his daughter Mithra's side, only to find Olga, driven mad with grief and loss, ready to take her revenge. But before Asura can rage out, the golden encouragement spider reveals itself to be the true foe all along. Chakravartin, the god of mantra, the embodiment of the whole corrupt system. Asura really only has one answer to everything always, even though in this case, he's warned ending Chakravartin means an end to all mantra-based technology, including his own life. The final battle is even more appropriately cosmic than what has come before it. Planets are thrown like pebbles, and Asura must fight and pierce through successive layers of illusion and reality. Eventually, the wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command, to quote Percy Shelley, is wiped from Chakravartin's face, And so too is the universe, breaking the old cycles of suffering. We meet our cast again in a different life, living in the paradise that is a free and liberal society, until a new threat looms on the horizon. There are also 2 additional pieces of DLC content. Lost Episodes 1, titled At Last Someone Angrier Than Me, where you get to knee Evil Ryu in the nuts. And the other titled Lost Episodes 2, The Strongest vs. the Angriest, a visually spectacular fight with Akuma that eventually splits the moon in 2. And that brings us to the end of the story. Although I love the visual flair and the purity of how the theme of rage is expressed, I can't quite get behind Asura's philosophy. Waking up and choosing violence, otherwise known as keeping it too real, can lead to what experts term when keeping it real goes wrong. I personally believe in atomizing my enemies by the practice of cold and impartial civil and rational debate, as you should too. But a Tool album Death Star powered by souls sure can come in handy sometimes. The game's soundtrack was composed by Chikayo Fukuda and combines the traditional with the modern, striking interesting blends of Eastern and Western. The soundtrack beats with the pulse of ancient drums and haunting and heartfelt vocals from Tomoyo Mitani that often take on the character of a hymn. Yasha also has his own distinct theme, with a catchy Western-sounding motif. The soundtrack, particularly in the DLC, even sometimes leans into electronic dance. Voice acting is typical of the quality of most anime and can be switched between Japanese and English, and sound effects are decent, of a certain kind of arcadey Capcom quality, with which many would already be familiar. There are so many unforgettable scenes with such a sense of scale to which no other game comes close. The characters are distinct and intricate, and the use of a strong visual identity means this game has aged gracefully into the present, much like Sharon Stone. The battle with Wizen is still one of the most incredible scenes in gaming, of which some of you might already be familiar since it featured prominently in the trailers. But it's a crime that the cosmic scale of the fight with the game's ultimate antagonist will likely go unknown to most people, hidden away as it was behind DLC. The game's sumptuous visual design is also well served by some beautiful shaded and choreographed scenes. I love the exotic imagery and ornately decorated character models, the way the skin looks at some points tattooed and other points engraved like stone, or the divine arms and appendages made of molded bronze and circuitry that Asura inexplicably gains as his anger swells. And the colors, the red of anger and the blood-clotted appearance of the Goma, coexist in an evocative blend of burnished bronzes and hazy sepias, recalling an ancient land. In space, the exquisitely psychedelic Karma Fortress observes the deep blue sphere of the planet that has become a scarred battleground. To simply observe Asura's wrath is one of the greatest achievements of decadence that human culture has ever achieved, and I'll always be here to celebrate such things. Naruto and Dragon Ball have been listed as direct inspirations on the game, and rage as a mechanic and motivation has similar callbacks to countless other games and fictional figures. The first that springs to mind is the Hulk, whose power grows from his rage. The Hulk is like a rage elemental, just like dogs are a species of friendship elemental. The evidence is written in your hearts. The other figure that feeds off his rage is that of Guts from the gorgeously drawn anime series Berserk. But Guts is a mere man, not a god, armed but with an implement too heavy and too rough to be called a sword, or at least he begins that way. The eventual team-up of Asura and Yasha also share a lot of echoes in the team-up of the stoic and direct Ken and the flashy and graceful style of Rei in Fist of the North Star. The game also borrows some things from Hindu mythology, thematically and visually. Apart from the obvious cycle of rebirth and karma, Vita is the name of the personification of drought. Asura is more a class of being than a being itself. The rest of the names are an assortment in origin. In fiction, one incredible book stands out to me as having some remarkable similarities. Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light. This deals with a far future colony in which the founding colonists have taken on the roles of Hindu gods, using technology so advanced as to be not dissimilar to magic, to quote Arthur C. Clarke, and oppress the populace and all technological progress. The protagonist takes on the aspect of the Buddha, Mahasamatman, dropping the Maha, and the Atman and going by Sam, and begins a revolution, teaming up with Yama, who bears the aspect of the god of death, and who coalesces him back to the world of the living from his scattered atoms, using his advanced scientific knowledge. There's a really memorable scene where Sam, upon being restored to life, dices for his soul with the alien demon Jinn, the former owners of this world, just to feel something again. I would consider it a beautifully written and highly underappreciated gem of a book. Look how nice the cover is on this one with its cute cut corners. When I got it, it even smelled nice, faintly redolent of incense. It's easy to overlook this title as some mindless nonsense, but I can't help but feel it's the crystallization of a developer's beautiful dream. Arguments can be had about just how much of a game this really is, or just how execrable QuickTime events really are, but all that would be missing the point. There has only ever been one Asura's Wrath. An old friend of mine believed in a principle called the rule of cool. Back then it was a method of settling a dispute over a fictional setting's lore, but it could just as easily sometimes be an expression of a design philosophy. Here it feels in full effect, redeeming even QuickTime events, realizing something that I could only describe as an interactive movie for cool people who like video games and cool looking things. And can't that be enough? I am grateful but also terrified by the pace of the growth of this channel. Thank you. I realize this episode's game might not be quite as retro as some might have been hoping, but you know, the heart wants what the heart wants. I have a very large list of games I plan to get through, and I hope to find something to everyone's taste while still keeping my own short attention span engaged. I was actually hoping to do Syndicate Wars, but that game has a difficulty curve that legitimately made me want to escape samsara and seek moksha, if you know what I mean in a video game.